My son-in-law stood at the head of my dining room table, the table I built with my own hands, 32 years ago from a kit I ordered out of a Sears catalog, and told me I was sitting in the wrong chair. "That's where I sit now, Earl," he said. Not asked, said. I looked at him for a moment. Then I looked at my daughter, who was suddenly very interested in stirring something on the stove. Then I looked down at the chair. The chair I had eaten breakfast in every single morning since 1991. I got up. I moved to the other end. And I told myself it wasn't worth the fight. That was my first mistake, not the last. My name is Earl, and I'm 67 years old. I spent 31 years working as an electrician in Columbus, Ohio. I've wired hospitals, schools, half the apartment complexes on the east side of town. My hands know what hard work feels like. My back knows it too, especially on cold mornings. I raised my daughter, Melissa, mostly on my own after her mother passed. Breast cancer. Melissa was 14. We figured it out together, the two of us, in that house on Claremont Avenue. It wasn't always pretty, but we got through it. She graduated high school, went to Columbus State, got a degree in accounting. I was so proud of her, I cried in the parking lot after the ceremony and told her it was allergies. She met her husband, Troy, at a work function about 6 years ago. I tried to like him. I genuinely did. He was charming in that slick way some men are. The kind of charming that feels like a performance. But Melissa loved him, and that was enough for me. I gave them my blessing. I danced at their wedding. I gave them a check that took a real bite out of my savings. 14 months after the wedding, they showed up at my door on a Sunday afternoon with a casserole dish and a look on their faces that I recognized immediately. That look that says we need something and we're hoping the food softens the blow. Troy had been laid off from his sales job. Melissa's accounting salary was covering the basics, but their apartment lease was up in 3 weeks, and they couldn't qualify for a new place without his income showing on the application. Could they stay with me just until Troy found something new? Just a few months, they said. 3 months at the most. I have 1,400 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. I'm 67 years old, and I like quiet mornings and the news on at a reasonable volume in my routines. I knew all of this. I knew what I was agreeing to. I said yes anyway. Because she's my daughter. Because her mother isn't here. Because I could not look at Melissa's face and say no. The first month was fine, more or less. Troy was applying for jobs, or said he was. Melissa kept her hours at work. I cooked most nights. Troy ate well and complimented the food and loaded the dishwasher sometimes. I thought, okay, this might actually work. The second month, small things started shifting. Troy began working from home. Not because he'd found a job, but because he'd started some kind of online reselling business. Buying things at estate sales and flipping them on eBay. He set up in my second bedroom, which had been my workshop. My tools got stacked in the garage. My workbench got pushed against the wall to make room for his shipping supplies and printer. I didn't say anything. It was just space. He started making calls in the living room during the day, loud calls, sales voice calls, while I was trying to watch the news or read. When I mentioned it once, gently, he said he'd try to keep it down. He didn't really, but I let it go. Month 3, Melissa quietly asked if they could stay a little longer. Troy had a few good weeks on the reselling, but wasn't ready to commit to an apartment. I said okay. Fine. Month 4, Troy started calling my house our place when he was on the phone with people. I heard him tell someone, yeah, come by our place Saturday. Our place. I stood in the kitchen holding a coffee cup, and I didn't say anything because I was so surprised by the casual ownership in his voice that I couldn't find words fast enough. Month 5. He rearranged the living room furniture without asking me. I came home from my Thursday morning walk, and the couch was against a different wall, and the armchair I'd had for 15 years was pushed into the corner at an angle that made it hard to see the television. When I asked why, he said the room flowed better this way, and that I'd get used to it. I moved the armchair back that night after they went to bed. He moved it again 2 days later. I want to be honest with you, because I think a lot of people in my situation don't admit this. I was embarrassed. Not of him. Of myself. Of how long I let it go on. I've worked with my hands my whole life. Dealt with difficult contractors and inspectors and clients who didn't know what they wanted, and I knew how to hold my ground in those situations. But this was my daughter's husband. In my mind, pushing back on him felt like pushing back on her. And I had worked so hard not to be the difficult father-in-law, the one who caused problems in their marriage. So I swallowed things I should have said. I let moments pass that I should have held. And he got bolder every time I stayed quiet. Mud 6. I found out he had given a key to my house to his brother without asking me. His brother, Cody, started showing up on weekday afternoons to hang out while Troy worked. They'd be in the living room when I got back from errands, watching something on my television, empty beer cans on my coffee table. Cody was polite enough, but he wasn't my guest. He was a stranger in my home, and nobody had asked me if that was okay. I told Troy that evening that I needed him to ask before giving anyone a key to my house. He nodded in that way. People nod when they're not really listening. Said, yeah, for sure. Totally fair. Cody kept coming. I started spending more time in my own bedroom just to have a space that felt like mine. Here is the thing about getting older that nobody prepares you for. You start second-guessing your own instincts. You think, maybe I'm being rigid. Maybe I'm not adapting. Maybe this is just what it looks like to share a space, and I've forgotten because I've lived alone for so long. I'm a reasonable person. I know that. But reasonable people can be worn down if it happens slowly enough. My grandson, Melissa's son from a brief relationship years before she met Troy, a kid I helped raise more than anyone knows. My grandson, Kevin, was 16 that fall. He drove over on a Saturday morning to help me clean out the gutters, something we'd done together every October since he was old enough to hold a ladder. Kevin's a good kid. Quiet, observant, has his grandmother's eyes. We were up on the roof pulling out wet leaves when Kevin said to me, without looking up from what he was doing, "Grandpa, why don't you just say something to him?" I asked what he meant. "You know what I mean," he said. "He walks around like it's his house. It bothers you. We can all see it bothers you." 16 years old. Saw it clearly in 5 minutes what I had been explaining away for 6 months. I told Kevin I didn't want to cause trouble. He looked at me then. "You're not the one causing trouble, Grandpa." I've thought about that sentence almost every day since. I didn't do anything that weekend, but something settled in me, a kind of clarity. I started paying attention differently, not looking for excuses to feel okay about things, but actually seeing what was in front of me. What was in front of me was this. Troy had not gotten the real job in 6 months. The reselling business made a few $100s a month maybe. Melissa's salary was supporting all 3 of them. My house was being used as a free hotel while they saved money, and they were saving money because they had 0 housing costs, 0 utility contributions, 0 grocer. I think about that dining room table a lot, the one I built myself from a Sears kit in 1991. 32 years of Thanksgivings, birthdays, Sunday breakfasts, homework sessions with Kevin when he was small. That table held a lot of life. And for 7 months, I let someone else decide who sat where at it in my own home. Because I was afraid of being called difficult. That's the part that stays with me. Not what Troy did, what I allowed. There's something that happens when you ignore a wrong thing long enough. It doesn't stay still. It grows. It gets comfortable. It starts making decisions. Troy didn't wake up one morning and decide to take over my house. It happened inch by inch because every time I swallowed something I should have said, I handed him another inch. That's just cause and effect. Not complicated, not mysterious. Just the plain result of what I chose to do and what I chose not to do. What I know now, what I should have known at 67 after everything I'd been through, is that kindness without honesty isn't really kindness. It's avoidance wearing a kind face. I told myself I was being generous, being patient, being the bigger person. But I was really just afraid of conflict, afraid of damaging Melissa's marriage, afraid of being the difficult old man who couldn't adapt. And that fear cost me 7 months of peace in my own home. Kevin saw it in 5 minutes from a rooftop in October. 16 years old, pulling wet leaves out of a gutter, and he had the clarity I'd lost. You're not the one causing trouble, Grandpa. I've thought about that almost every day since. There's a kind of intelligence that isn't about book learning or experience. It's about seeing what's actually in front of you without flinching. Kevin had it. I had to earn it back. The thing that finally moved me wasn't anger. It was that word Troy used. Managing. He said he'd been managing things around here. And I realized I'd let the story of my own home get rewritten without saying a word. A man who knows who he is, who has worked honestly and loved well and built things with his hands. That man doesn't disappear quietly into his own bedroom to avoid an argument. Or he shouldn't. And when he does, the only one who can fix it is him. So I fixed it, not with a raised voice, not with a scene. I picked up the phone. I handed over a piece of paper, and I held the line. That's all it took. 31 years of electrical work taught me that the most dangerous problems are the ones you've been walking past every day pretending they're fine. At some point, you stop pretending and you do the repair. My armchair is back where it belongs. My house is quiet on Thursday mornings. My daughter calls on Sundays. Kevin drives over on his own now, and we have breakfast like nothing ever happened. Because between us, nothing did. I don't think life punishes bad people on some cosmic schedule. I just think that what you build, in your home, in your relationships, in yourself, reflects what you're willing to stand up for. Troy got smaller every time I said nothing. I got smaller too, and the moment I decided to stop, we both had a chance to become something more honest. That's enough of a lesson for me.